Hello, everyone, and welcome to the White Rabbit Podcast. My name is Matt Kraus, coming to you from Bandurma, Turkey. And my co-host, Alper Rosanes, is coming to you from Barcelona, Spain. And we're going to do a really short intro today, since we had our guest, Nick Richtsmeier, on the podcast just the other day. And this is a follow-up to that episode. So if you want to know more about who is this guy, Nick, or how to get in touch with him, go to that episode that we just published the other day and check out the intro there. Anyway, so Nick is publishing a book this summer called The Damn Rules, which is a list of 7 rules you can guide or you can use to guide your life and your business if you want to step outside this Elon Muskish, Facebookish economy that we have. Okay, so last time we went deep on rule number 1, no one's paying attention. And we went a little bit into rule number 2, it was never about you. But further down the list, there are a couple rules in particular that I want to dig into today, because they sound especially counterintuitive, or at least to this presentation trainer's ears, they sound counterintuitive. And I'm wondering how we can apply them to the world of presentations. And those 2 rules are number 4, the customer is wrong, and number 5, the competition is your friend. So today, let's dig into those a little bit deeper. So, Nick, can you start us out with rule number 4, the customer is wrong, and tell us a little more about that rule, like what you mean there and stuff like that?
Yeah. I'm drawing a blank. Did we talk about Marshall Fields on our last episode?
No.
Okay. Well,
No.
To get to the customer is wrong, we got to start with Marshall Fields.
Excellent.
So for the non-Americans on the call, there is a long history of, or was, not anymore, but there was a long history of giant, elaborate department stores in the United States. And originally they were family owned. So there was the Wanamaker's in Philadelphia and the Macy's in New York and the Marshall Fields in Chicago. And the Marshall Fields was famous for its beautiful Christmas tree, and you would go in the holidays and they'd do the beautiful windows. And it's actually Marshall Fields that originated the story that shows up in Miracle on 34th Street, where Santa goes and says, hey, if you can't find it here, well, you can go find it at this other store, right? It was Marshall Fields that actually had that original policy.
Wow, okay.
And it is also Marshall Fields who, by history, coined the term, the customer is always right. So this, of course, has become embedded in business culture. The customer is always right. The customer is always right. And even to the point where, and all of this is very well intended, but even to the point where, one of the most incredible books coming out this year in the business space, I hope many of your readers have read it, is Incorruptible by Eric Ries.
Yeah.
Great book. He has a little diagram in that book. It's sort of a very simple, of your investors, your team, and your customers. And in one version, the investors at the bottom, and it's like this tipsy pyramid, right? If the investors are the most important thing, the thing is really tipsy.
Okay.
Which, that's a really true point. Where if the customer is at the bottom, then everything works great. Customer, team, investors. And that is, in broad strokes, true.
Okay.
Right? Here's the problem. And anybody who's lived inside of a very customer-centric or an attempted to be customer-centric business knows, is it never works.
Okay.
Because you have customer A wants this thing, customer B wants this other thing, customer C wants this other thing, customer D and then your team has to decide who to obsess over, and they have to build systems and operations. Well, we build systems for these customers, but then these customers don't like those systems, so then we have to do something else, and then and all of this starts to get piled onto marketing.
Sure.
And customer service, mostly, of we got to figure out how to connect to everybody. And again, this is advice that has come to us without context. When it was created, had deep context. It was Marshall Fields in downtown Chicago attracting the near suburban housewife in the mid 50s and 60s who had newly excess capital, access to resources, and wanted to be more upwardly mobile than she was.
Okay.
And so Marshall Fields knew exactly who he was building for. And the building was built for that. The shape of the walkways were built for that. Where the department sat was built for that. He could obsess over the customer because he had a very specific customer in mind.
Okay.
And so the first big problem here is that most businesses never do that. They're so afraid and so anxious about losing a potential customer that they never do the work of getting very specific. And the internet is complicit in this. The internet is a context-free zone. And so it's constantly incentivizing us to build businesses that have no context. We're just like blandly building things on the internet. So that's a huge problem. The other layer to the customer is wrong is that we increasingly, because of the internet and those things, we just don't even know what we want anymore, right? We're just sort of we're little reactive, addictive internet clones. And so we're just reacting to advertising and social media things and blah, blah, blah. And that sense right, you talk about this all the time about how reactive people are. Right. Well, that person got so mad about that thing for no reason. And, everybody's on edge all the time. And I talk about this extensively in the book. And so when you anchor to something bland and generic like the customer, what ends up happening is you build a people-pleasing business.
Okay.
And a people-pleasing business can't be trusted.
Okay.
Because it's gonna try to reinvent itself every time a new person walks through the door.
Okay.
And that reinvention, eventually what happens, and I've seen this over and over in businesses, is you end up charging a bunch of excess fees to client A over here so that you can afford to service client B over here. And, this is our lower tier of customers, so we don't take it, right? All of these things that get done, these manipulations that get done, so that the business can avoid doing what they absolutely have to do, which is getting clear. Clarity is the ultimate kindness in a business.
Okay.
And founders avoid clarity because they're afraid it's going to push people away. And because they idolize businesses like Elon Musk businesses, per the beginning of this call, that are completely unclear. What are Elon's businesses for? We don't even know. You just put X in front of something and it gets trillions of dollars. We don't even know. Well, if you actually look at the underlayment, what Elon's businesses are for is extracting capital from the U.S. government. That's what they're for. But you can't say that. So he produces these genericized things that are apparently for everybody. Unfortunately, those trends have become quite normal. So kind of, pivoting to your audience quickly, and then we'll let you guys interact with this a little bit, is it's very hard as a speaker to come in and really obsess about the audience in a way that's about them, because they get genericized. You don't know them. You haven't met them. There's often not like a meet or greet or something like that. But if we've followed rule number one, if we've accepted rule number one, that it's not about you, then I have to make a choice about who's in the room. I have to make a choice of who the center of the target of the room is. And that choice is going to have consequences, because some people are going to fall off the sides of that choice, right? But the more clarity you have, actually, the more everybody in the room goes, oh, I'm not exactly who this is for, but that was fascinating, right? Because clarity brings specificity, and specificity is interesting. And that's actually how we actually engage people, is by making difficult, focused choices. The customer's never going to ask us to do that. The customer's just going to ask us to flail about and chase their wishes. So, which is going to keep you as the owner from clarity.
Okay. And so I have something I wanted to ask about, or a comment that I wanted to make. But Alper, do you have anything on your mind at this point?
I also have a comment. I can wait for you.
Okay. So Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this phrase, the customer is always right, applies if you have context, but or it can apply if you have context, if you have a lot of context about your customer. But if you do not have context, then it does not apply anymore, or at least it cannot apply healthily. Is that what you're saying?
I would say context and specificity. So
Okay.
those two things, you have to have a deep, rich context of the customer, and you have to have specificity about who they are, to the point that most owners really get hibbity-jibbity about it, because like, that's not enough customers if that's too small of a and so they don't do the work to get to the specificity they need.
Okay. So we as presentation trainers, preach the presentation training gospel of listen to your audience, listen to your audience, listen to your audience. But so when I initially saw your rule there, I thought, wow, this sounds really counterintuitive. Nick is saying something that's kind of the opposite of what we in our industry are saying. So people are going to come up to us and say, hey, Matt and Alper, you've been preaching this gospel for 4 years. And then all of a sudden you have this guy, Nick, come on and he's saying something on the opposite. But if I understand correctly, that's not opposite at all. Because if you're basically saying you maybe, not 100% of the time, but maybe can believe this phrase, the customer is always right, or listen to your audience. You can maybe believe this phrase if you have a tremendous amount of context and specificity. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't want to blow up 4 years of your show. So, you can put the disclaimer at the end and be like, that guy was an asshole and didn't know what he was talking about. You tack that on. I'll jump off the video and you record a little second ending and be like, well, guys,
We'll
sorry
just
about
cut
that.
it, yes.
Yeah. I worry about broad phrases like listen to your audience.
Okay.
Because immediately I go to listen to them for what? Listen to which ones? Right. So if I'm in a room of 400 people at ABC Manufacturing Company, and it's the annual kickoff meeting for ABC Manufacturing, and it's the administrators, and it's the heads of the production lines, and it's the engineers, and it's the executive team, and all those people in that room want different things. Right. And some of them don't even want to be there. Right. There's all these sorts of things happening in that room. So if you tell me as a presenter, hey, this room of 400 people from ABC Manufacturing, listen to them, listen to what they want. Well, which ones?
Okay. Yeah. And this is an excellent point, because let's bring the numbers down here a little bit for easier scale. If you are presenting, let's say, to a boardroom of 12 people, there might be 12 people in your audience, but maybe only 4 of them are super influencers. And those 4, after you've left, when your presentation is over, those 4 are going to sway the opinions of the remaining 8. And so you want to get to know those 4 really well. You want to be talking to them in their offices, or better yet, going out to a beer, going out to lunch or dinner with them or whatever. And so that you can make your message very specific for those 4 people. And so that's what you're talking about here, if I'm hearing you correctly, is the importance of context and specificity. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I would also just briefly pull in rule number 3, which is the problem is the problem. And the rules sort of build on each other. They can be taught independently, but they sort of build on each other a little bit. And part of what rule number 3 is about is we got to get to what we're really here to solve for. Because so many times in businesses, particularly when we're not trained in how to think about these things in trust-made ways, we are solving the wrong problem, right? So if we go back to the boardroom with 12 people in it, I hope that first we've followed rule number 3 and we've gotten really clear what we're in that room to do. Because you can't decide who your audience is until you know what the job is. So as the person presenting to that room of 12 people, I got to be laser clear on what it is that I'm there to do. What does winning look like? What does success look like? Because maybe I got 4 very influential guys in the corner of the room, and I've buddied up to them, and they've influenced me in terms of what I'm going to say. But actually, as it turns out, the success of the room is to convince those guys they're wrong. That the most important thing for the business to happen in that room is that we convince those 4 guys they're wrong. and the CEO really needs me to convert them. Well, I would have solved that by really getting down to root cause first. What am I in the room for? What am I solving for? And if I'm a presenter and the person who's brought me in says, well, I really just want you to, I just really want you to give people value. Don't agree to that, because you need to know what they mean by that. Right. Or if I am the CEO, I hope I know exactly what that meeting's for. Right. And so, because human beings by nature tend to acquiesce to others, we tend to sort of let other people's emotions run the show, and we tend to let stronger personalities who are taller and have blonde hair and strong male features tend to run the show. Because we do these things, we have to be rigidly obsessed with getting clear on what we're actually solving for. That's why the problem is the problem precedes rule number 4, because if I don't know what the problem is, I'm going to pick the wrong customer.
Okay. Yeah. And Alper, I don't want to hog all the questions on this one. What's on your mind?
I have two things. One has something to do that Nick mentioned all the way in the beginning. As companies grow, you gave the example of Macy's and the other departments. Were they also department stores, by the way?
Yeah, they're all those big family-owned department stores, yeah.
The thing that strikes me as ironic in that is, as the company grows, they can still keep preaching the customer is always right, but try having to deal with their customer service and see what happens, especially as they get giant and you get bombarded with these automated AI-powered customer services. So good luck with that. The second thing is, I think what you were describing is pretty much in line actually with what we were talking about, because I don't think word by word it was listen to your audience, but more about like you are there to create, some sort of value to them. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think I really like what you said, because it puts a certain responsibility on the speaker, on the presenter, to determine in the first place if he or she is in the right place.
Yes. Am I even in the right room? Am I the person who should be presenting this? Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because I cannot be forced to walk into a room of 50 people and first of all, listen to them, try to understand their problems. What if I'm seeing these people for the first time? So I think it's also a responsibility on the speaker's side to determine, am I the right person to speak to these people in the room? So I completely agree with your point of view.
Yeah, I think doubling down on that, because we have lived in a world, and Matt, you and I were texting about this the other day, because we've been living in a world that's been overrun by words. Everybody has a microphone. The three of us have microphones. Maybe we shouldn't, right? Everybody has a microphone. Everybody has a platform. Everybody has a whatever. And initially that was like a really cool idea, right? Because we could break sort of the oligarchy of knowledge, and it wasn't just a social class kind of thing and all that kind of stuff. Really good stuff. Here's the side effect of that is we have completely lost the urgency and sort of the holy mandate that it comes from being a communicator. Words are incredibly powerful. The ability to carry a room and to use words to literally create in a space and to open up ideas and move people and shuffle their perceptions is an incredibly important and significant and substantive thing. And we've lost our sense of that because we can all just go on and online and yap about whatever. But the reality is whole societies, whole worlds, whole histories have been changed by someone standing in front of a room choosing their words. And so that's why I like what you said, Alper, is this sense of like, when I see people and talk to people like, oh, I really want to be a public speaker. Well, okay, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a public speaker. I'm sure a lot of people who listen to your podcast want to be public speakers or are public speakers because it was their vision or their goal. But for what? For what? Right? Because whatever our work is, and if it's communication, if it's words, if it's moving the world with what we have to say, then it better be for something. It better be something that we have deep intention about, because it's too powerful. It's running around with a nuclear weapon. And we have to be more thoughtful about this. When I sat down, I've been pushed by a lot of people. I don't think I'm special in this way. I think this is true of a lot of people. Pushed by a lot of people like, Nick, you got to finish the book. You got to write this book. We know you have a book in you. You got to finish this book. You got to finish this book. And it came out of me like blood out of a turnip the last 6 to 9 months out of it. Like I really wrestled. I couldn't sleep. I was angry all the time. I was fighting it because I really had to struggle with the question of, who am I to write this book? Is it authentic to who I am and what I can bring to the table? Is it my honesty? And the honest truth of it is, even to the second to last draft, it wasn't. It wasn't my honesty. And I had to go further, and I had to push myself further to get to a place where there was a reason for this book to exist in the world. And so I am such a huge believer in words and communication that I think we can't just, say whatever the person who hired us wants us to say, right? We have to have a sense of deep, and I use this word carefully, deep, holy mandate for the job, because communicating is so important.
And we have so many historical examples of how it can be abused, how it can go so wrong just through words coming out of people's mouths.
Yeah. And we live in a world where we have people with massive platforms, and I'm not going to name names. You can fill in the blank with your favorite names. But we have people with massive platforms just shipping tripe. I mean, just absolute garbage. It's not like harmful, but it's just noise. And and as the AI thing has come on, their voices just get noisier. And it's like, well, hey, guess what? With AI, you can ship more noise. Thank God. You can make more crappy memes with little one-liners that say nothing, and you can make more posts and
more noise that sounds exactly like the person that was creating the noise in the first place. You can also mimic them.
Yeah, it's madness. It's madness. And I hope people who take it upon themselves to stand in front of rooms and listen to your podcast see their work with a higher sense of calling than that.
How many times, have you, and if yes, how many times have you fallen for like someone famous on YouTube, a nice speech, and then you realize that, wait a second, it's not this person, it's AI. Like I fell to that so many times with Ellen Watt's speeches because I like the guy, I like the ideas and everything. I like his voice too. But there are so many fakes circling YouTube right now.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be like on the moral high ground here. I think people should do with their time what works for them. I've really unplugged from all of that. Well, I just can't. It's too noisy. I can't think straight, and my ability to think is my most valued asset. And so I just am religious about making sure that I can maintain my ability to think well.
Can I dig, Matt, just a second, can I dig deeper? By the way, Nick, if you want to share what you mean by unplugging yourself from.
Yeah, I don't really do any guru following anymore. Like, I'll read your book if you wrote a book. I need some evidence that you wrote the book, so you've talked about it, you can be interviewed about it. There's some sort of, I want to see your ideas tested against large swaths of time and space. So if you can't carry an idea past 25 pages, then you don't have an idea yet. You just don't. You have a blog. There's nothing wrong with a blog. Blog's fine. I write blogs. But if you can't carry an idea past even 5,000 words, then you don't have an idea yet. And so I think there's a time and a place for these folks who have gone online and have to repeat themselves all the time and basically are, like the same message. Like I used to work deeply in the American evangelical world. And we always used to say that every preacher has 3 sermons. They just have rewritten them 3,000 times. Right. And I think that's sort of true. Like I probably have 3 sermons that I've rewritten 3,000. Like none of us are that special. But I don't want any of the guru stuff. I don't want any of the Like John Green in the U.S. this week just absolutely got reamed because he did a big giant mea culpa about his use of AI, and that he feels that he's been using it so much that he started using it because he needed it to keep up with the volume of content he felt the need to produce. He produces a lot of YouTube content. And I love John Green. I love his books. He's very smart. The Anthropocene Reviewed is like, I recommend it to people all the time. But I won't watch him on YouTube because the incentive structure for, hey, I got to pump out a new video every 48 hours, so I better figure out something to say. Well, what is he doing to figure that out? Well, he told us he's using AI. And it turns out that he himself has said, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't think straight anymore. It's affecting my ability to do what I love doing for the last 25 years. And he was like one of the original YouTube guys. So it's a dangerous, dangerous ecosystem full of well-meaning people.
Alper, I want to ask Nick about the next rule too. Do you want to stick on this one a bit, or is it
No,
okay?
I'm curious about that one.
Okay, so Nick, the next rule, rule number 5, the competition is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like we've lived through the era of blue ocean and a category of one, and all of these things where you're such a pretty, very special, super pretty snowflake that no one can be like you. And the best way for you to sell is to just prove to everyone that you're the only one who thinks your thoughts and you're the only one who can do what you can do. And that's the way you have to win. And then you let everybody else have the spoils. That's categorically insane.
Okay.
I'm overtly and deeply anti-blue ocean. One, because it's not true. You're just not that special. And most of the firms that tried to do this with software. And what happened to the software industry? The software industry just became, hey, look at this bland thing with the same website and the same words that came out of a word generator. And look at this bland web, what's the difference between Zoom and HubSpot and Slack and Teams and nothing? They're all variations on and all of these people once upon a time were doing product-led growth from a blue ocean strategy. Like, no one's like us. We're all very, very special. And they weren't then, and they aren't now. And for small and medium-sized businesses who will never, ever, ever have the resources to become anything close to monopoly status. Because what you're really talking about there is, I deserve to be a monopoly.
Yeah.
And this has become the massive shift. This has become the massive shift in American capital. Like, we used to love competition. One of the things that we used to love about America is we love competition.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have the most powerful capitalists in the country saying competition is bad. We should have all monopolies. Mm-hmm. That's insane. But it is the logical consequence of the blue ocean thinking. And the reality is, for most small and medium-sized businesses, they are going to forever live in an ecosystem of other people who are competing for the solution that they offer. And the more important reality that I talk about in the book is, your buyer gets to decide who your competition is. You don't get to decide. And so I get the narcissism that says, well, you need to present yourself in a way where they couldn't possibly have any other option other than you. Okay, well, good luck. Go sit in a yurt somewhere and figure that out. Or we can think in expansive ways and realize that healthy economies expand, and healthy industries expand, and healthy marketplaces expand. And that expansion then produces smaller subsets of categories and categories into subcategories. And all of that tooling, all of that business helps customers make decisions. And if we actually do care about the humans on the other side of the transaction, the so-called customers, then what we can do for them is help them make good decisions. And nobody makes good decisions when they only have one choice. Nobody makes good decisions. So what good competition does is it creates healthy categories. And I use several examples in the book of how this works. But a healthy category is a robust set of of people and teams and ventures who are trying to do relatively similar things, and they make each other better.
Okay.
Think of the auto industry in the middle of the 20th century. Competition, man. Competition created the automobile, right? Think about Steve Jobs versus Bill Gates in the 1990s. Competition created the personal computer as we know it. Mark Zuckerberg has had pretty much a 10-year run of unfettered control over the social media landscape. Has that been good? Has anything been good about that? I mean, I don't just mean the fact
he
that
had MySpace.
I don't just mean that he is helping teenagers commit suicide. That's bad. But he also is bankrupting his own company. He literally lights money on fire by the hundreds of millions of dollars on a daily basis. He's burning capital, and has been for a decade, that could be used to build the next robust ecosystem of things that actually solve problems. But instead, we go, oh, he's super, super special, and you should be special too. And we play into narcissism, which is harmful both for the person who is trying to be told that they should be a very super special snowflake narcissist, and is harmful to everyone around them.
So he will be the last person I would want to play the devil's advocate for, but just for the sake of argument, could he come up and say, well, that's how you find these outlying new technologies, by throwing a bunch of on the wall and see what sticks. So you have to try. You have to try.
What are those outlying technology? Give me an example. Like the one where he's like a 3D person and doesn't have legs, and they spent $300 billion on that and then shut it down because no one wanted it. Or the sexual predator glasses. Is that the new invention that we should be excited about? Like, what exactly are we doing with monopolistic capital that's proving to be such a really incredible innovation in the world?
Let me interject with a more presentation related.
Oh, you mean me just ranting? Isn't what you're here for, Matt?
I want to hear what you have to think about something, Nick. I want to hear what your thoughts are on something. So you're talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're talking about this idea of blue ocean, and I am a unique snowflake, and it gives you room to be a toxic narcissist. But at this, also in the presentation training pantheon, or whatever I don't know if that's the correct word for sacred books.
I think it should be. If it's not a pantheon, it should be. I think we need to work on that.
Okay, whatever it is, the selection of sacred tenets that are presentation training. So one is that you are up there speaking. Let's go back to this example of presenting to the board. You are presenting to the board because the board thinks you are uniquely qualified to tell them what they need to know. What do you have to say about that, Nick? What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, again, it's anchored in context and a particular problem. And so when that is happening, when we are anchored in a particular context to a particular problem, and we've followed some of the other rules, then we can decide, can I bring something to the table to solve that problem? So now we're talking in terms of a transaction, and I use transaction in the most positive sense.
Okay.
We're speaking in terms of a transaction, not in terms of a position. So blue ocean, and you don't have competitors and you're a category of one, is a positioning argument. It says this is your position in the marketplace universe.
Mm-hmm.
You being invited into a particular situation that says, man, I don't know if anybody can solve this problem but you. Like, I don't think anybody can speak. I think you are the guy to speak to this situation. Now we are not in a positioning context, we're in a transaction context. You are being presented with the opportunity to trade. You can trade what you have to bring to the table to the problem that they have, and there will be money exchanged, assumably, unless they're going to pay you in, turnips or something.
Okay.
We love a transaction.
Huh?
Transactions are beautiful things because it allows you to stress test your value Can my value solve the problem that is here? And you have a clear way to measure whether the other person has enough skin in the game to let you solve the problem. And that's money. They give you money, right? And so from a speaking standpoint, one of the reasons why great speakers, I think, do this well and can be so valuable is because they think about these things. Maybe not this, they won't necessarily use this word, but they think about these things in a transactional context.
Okay.
They're not the positioning, I'm the speaker that everyone should bring in to talk about blah, blah, blah. They're like, hey, I'm good in a few specific ways. There's other people who are good in other ways. There's a lot of stuff you shouldn't hire me for. And they open themselves up to those transactions. These are the kinds of speaking events, right? And this is just different than people who are just like doing circuit speaking, right? The circuit speaking of like, hey, I have a shtick, like I used to be really involved in the wealth management world, and the wealth management world has a lot of excess capital, so their conferences are very fancy. And so I'd go to the conferences, and and the headline speaker at the conference is, I don't know, like the person who just won the Academy Award, and so who just won the Academy Award is going to give their keynote address on prevailing through adversity. And it's like,
yeah,
I just know they spent like $400,000 of these people's money getting, Robert Downey Jr. to speak on prevailing through adversity. And then he's going to tell the same story he's told a bazillion times about how he was, spent out on drugs through all of his, and it's fine. It's fine. People will pay you that. They will pay you for celebrity. They will pay you for all these other things. But that's the beauty of a transaction, is you get to decide, is that the value I want to bring? And if Robert Downey Jr. wants, and I don't know that Robert Downey Jr. does that. He's the first name that popped in my head. But if he wants to do that, if that's the transaction he wants to bring to the table, great. That is his choice. And you as the speaker get to decide what is the transaction you want to bring to the table. And that's vulnerable. A lot of the book is about vulnerability, and that really good leaders and really good companies embrace vulnerability. And it's vulnerable to say, I'm not the speaker for all things. I'm the speaker for a few things.
Okay.
And I hope people will hire me for that.
Yeah. So Alper, do you have things on your mind that you want to ask about? The competition is your friend?
Not, but I was just smiling at Nick's last comment on vulnerability, because it also seems to have become a huge trend in the last decade or something. I mean, you invoke it, then then you can open doors, or you can open conversations that can last for a lifetime.
I know. I really wrestled with putting it on the cover of my book because it's in the subtitle of the book, but it's so a central part of the case that I'm making in the book that I had to address it. I want to be really clear what I mean by vulnerability. What I mean by vulnerability isn't the performed Instagram, if life is hard, like that's what I'm talking about. You and I, in fact, I don't even have to give you words. You know exactly what I mean when I say vulnerability.
Yes.
You can feel it in your body. And if you can't feel it in your body, if you can't feel it spreading like tension across your chest, or turning your stomach, or making your spine straighten, or raising fundamental questions of, should I even exist in this world and what the hell am I going to do with myself, then we're not talking about vulnerability. We're talking about more internet performance crap. That's not vulnerability. If I'm doing it on the internet and the way I'm going to judge its effectiveness is how many people clicked a stupid heart button on it, that's not vulnerability. That's performance. And unfortunately, it's just another thing, like authenticity, like all these things that we have stolen the meaning of the word, right? All this goes back to 20 years ago when a bunch of people sat in a room and said, you know what we should call the people that you connect with on this stupid app that are just going to follow you around and look at pictures of what you ate for dinner? We're going to call them your friends. Those people are not your friends. Right? So this gets back full circle to communicators and why communicators are so important, because we have to get back to using words with rich contextual meaning, not tying together trend words in the hopes that they're, like, oh, well, that's a clickable headline. Maybe people will listen to me. These words matter, and how we use them matters. And so I ended up I talked about earlier, kind of the last mile of the book and how it really was a struggle for me. The choice to really lean forward into the vulnerability was part of that choice. And because I didn't want to be wrapped into these people who are doing vulnerability theater. I don't want to be seen that way. Because being a business owner has been a very vulnerable experience for me. It's been very scary. I've had to face every demon I've ever had. And I talk about it in the book. And if the work that you're doing isn't pushing your demons to the surface, then you're probably not doing your work. You're probably not doing the thing that you're in the world to do. Because your work should always pull you into your undefined and undiscovered spaces. And that's a vulnerable experience. So if you're not at the edge of yourself, if you're not being pushed into your own undiscovered country, then you're probably not doing your work. You're probably doing somebody else's work. Or you're probably chasing customer satisfaction or some other thing, right? And for the expansive economies and for the good societies and all the things that we all care about to happen, leaders have to be at the edge of the work that they are here to do. Which is why I ended up coming full circle on vulnerability.
Well, on this podcast, we made a lot of movie references up today, and what you told us right now reminded me of the scene in Avatar, the first one. I don't know if you remember, he was going to the mountain to pick up a flying companion.
Mm-hmm.
And he was asking, well, how do I know? And they were supposed to be for life. And he was asking, well, how do I know it's the right one? And Netir was calmly saying, he's going to try to kill you.
Yeah.
That's how you find out.
Yeah.
So you cannot be safe and protected and intend to go all the way if you're doing something meaningful.
Yeah, because what the human psyche is designed to do is to claim energetic space, the next area that we actually don't. We do this all the time. We make commitments. We say we're going to build something where we bring on a new team that is clearly outside of what we're capable of. And our brains do this subconsciously so that we are drawn into expansion. So we're like, okay, I have to be bigger. I have to be able to hold more. I have to be healthier. I have to be more emotionally stable. I have to be more cognitively aware, right? Like I mentioned to you guys earlier, I'm obsessive about my ability to think well. I didn't have to be obsessive about my ability to think well 10 years ago. That just wasn't where I was professionally. I have to be today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Matt, you were saying something and I cut you off.
Well, I have since forgotten what I was going to say. It evidently was not that profound or memorable.
Nick, I think why Matt forgot what he was going to say is because he was probably looking at me thinking, what a hypocritical prick. I mean, this guy's talking about taking risks and going bold. I'm not one of those people, by the way. I mean, there are parts of my life where I practice that, but I would be the last person to stand here and say, be bold and take the risk and go. No. I think Matt's lost his train of thought because of that, because he's known me for the better part of my life.
Well, but I think let's just pause there for just a second, because I think it's important to contextualize what I'm saying. Because we're not talking about, this is so different for every person. There are people for whom making the decision to be the town librarian is the big vulnerable risk for them. That's the big vulnerable risk. I can do it. I can be the town librarian. I can provide that service. For some people, it's moving from line cook to sous chef. That's the big vulnerable, right? So we're not doing like founder theater where it's like, oh, we're changing the world and here's me. We're not doing this. Like, again, we're so anchored into the theatrics because we've seen it all on YouTube so many times. What I'm talking about is your next thing, your next way of being, your next leadership capacity, your next ability to impact is being pulled out of you. And sometimes the thing that's being pulled out of you is to disappear from the spotlight because it's terrifying. So for some people listening, maybe the thing that's being pulled out of them is silence and quietness and disappearance because they're terrified of oblivion. They're terrified if no one sees them, right? And so they need to go to that place. They need to go to that silence, right? So I just want to be really clear, again, distinguishing between all the theatrics that we get online, which is total bullshit. And like, hey, well, you just need to get yourself in front of some stadium so that you can sell $5,000 an hour consulting agreements. Like that's not what we're talking about. Every person's expansion is unique to them and to their context, which is why you guys have heard me say context 78,000 times on this podcast. And it's one of the reasons why I wrote a book that doesn't get deep into really specific tactical things. Because the truth is, Alper, I don't know what you should do. I don't know what anybody on this podcast should do.
Of course.
But I know...
It's literally every man for himself.
I know how we should think.
Every person for himself.
Right? I know how we should think. I know how we can look at the world. And I know how we can go through these challenges with each other instead of against each other. It's another reason why competition is your friend, is because those people competing against you for that big contract, they care about the same things you do. Right? Those old CEOs of the car companies in the mid 20th century, they used to go smoke cigars together and compare notes, right? Because they knew they cared about the same thing. And there was only a handful of people in the world who cared about what they cared about, and they were willing to do it together.
So on that note, what do you think, Alper? Should we wrap it up for today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless you remembered what you had on your mind.
No, I think that whatever I had on my mind, it was so profound and necessary at that moment, but now it's long since forgotten, quickly disappearing into into time.
By the way, Nick, I don't know if you noticed, but about 15 minutes ago, you and I were more than happy to wander off to a completely different part of the topic, and Matt had to be the adult in the room, take the reins, and pull us back into the presentation circle.
If anybody on this podcast occasionally plays the role of Mr. Buzzkill, that's me. My second name is Mr. Buzzkill Kraus, Matt, Mr. Buzzkill Kraus.
Okay.
So Nick, it was a real pleasure to have you back on. So thanks again for joining us today. And
thank you,
Alper and I will see you at the next episode.
Okay. Sounds good, guys.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.